You're listening to the Front Yard Mission podcast. Front Yard Mission is a love God, love neighbor movement in our world. Jesus took the 613 commandments in the Old Testament and boiled them down to just two, to love God and love neighbor.
Hi, and welcome to the Front Yard Mission podcast. I'm your host, Steve Lutz. You'll hear from Jonathan here in a moment. Today is a special episode. We've had some great interviews lately, and today we get to look back at one of the big influences on Front Yard Mission. If you've been listening to us for any length of time, or if you've read the book, you know that loving your neighbor isn't a new idea. Far from it. It's something we always want to emphasize. This is a biblical thread woven all the way through Scripture. And as we love to quote, Jesus put it with beautiful simplicity: love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. This sums up the law and the prophets. This sums up everything God has told us. It's the greatest commandment, and as what Christians have always been called to do to this day. And it's an old idea, but it's always timely. And so we need regular reminders and fresh inspiration and a renewed focus on what Jesus says matters most. One of the leading voices on loving our neighbors in recent years, and a key influence on us here at Front Yard Mission, is The Art of Neighboring, which was a book written by Jay Pathak and Dave Runyon. I think it came out around 2012. I own it. When I planted a church, my whole launch team got it. And this book has been instrumental in helping us rediscover the importance of loving our neighbors and how to actually do it. We even got the idea for, the tic-tac-toe board, or the hashtag as we often call it. We got it from these guys. It's right there in The Art of Neighboring. It's right on the cover, actually. And a few years ago, Dave was, when we were in the process of writing the book, Dave was kind enough to write a blurb for the book. And we're grateful to that for him. And before that, Jonathan had a chance to interview him. And so what you're going to hear here in a second is Jonathan interviewing Dave Runyon, co-author of The Art of Neighboring. And you'll hear them mention the pandemic, since that was the context at the time. But the principles of Front Yard Mission are all over this conversation. So as you listen, pay attention to the themes and the ideas and the phrases. A lot of what we practice today traces back to things that you'll hear in this conversation. So we're grateful for The Art of Neighboring, grateful to Dave for joining Jonathan for this interview. Let's dive in.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. And we're so excited today to have Dave Runyon. Dave is the author of The Art of Neighboring. And Dave, I just want to tell you, this book has been super influential in my city and State College. And I know a lot of other friends. I have a pastor friend who was just on the Good Neighbors Zoomcast a couple of weeks ago in his church. It's a big church, influential church in Nashville. He bought a copy for everybody, and they're all reading it in their church. So pretty exciting to have you here today. And tell me about, I think the book came out in 2012. I read it like 5 or 6 years ago. It changed my mind about the Great Commandment. And how did you come up with the idea? How did you and Jay Pathak come up with the idea for the Art of Neighboring?
Well, first of all, Jonathan, it's been great to get to know you over the last couple of years, and I love what you're up to, what your church is up to. We didn't really come up with the idea. We had a mayor in our town who basically just told us if we could get churches to start a neighboring movement, it would help him solve a lot of the issues that he was facing in our city. And so it was a mayor who was just thinking very practically. And he basically said, the closer that people are in relationship based on proximity, the less weight there is on a lot of the systems that the government is trying to create for people in need. They can start another program for elderly shut-ins, or that person who's growing older and who's more isolated could be in relationship with their neighbors. And then he said this beautiful line. He said, what we're learning at the city is that relationships trump programs.
Yeah.
And, it was just this moment of for me personally, of just going, wow, he's telling us to do the Bible. He's telling us to do what Jesus said is most important, of love God with everything you have, love your neighbors yourself. And so that just sent me on a personal journey to consider how seriously was I taking my neighborhood and being present in my neighborhood. And then it's just been from there, it's been a crazy, 8 to 10 year ride for Jay and I. We just go around and tell Christians that they should probably know their neighbors' first names. And that's pretty much it. That's the whole book.
Yeah. So, one of the big aspects of the book is the block map. We call it the tic-tac-toe board or the hashtag. Yeah.
See if I can, there we go. Oh, it's acting weird on the screen. There we go. It's disappearing. There we go. There.
Like the magnet.
There we go. Yep. There it is right there. There's the magnet.
So, why is that the most important thing, to know your neighbor's name?
So much of momentum is just getting started. And so for most of us, we know a lot of the people that live around us in the sense that we've met them before or we see them. But there's many of the people who live around us that we just have forgotten their name, or we've never gone out of our way to get their name. And so if you can just get a little foothold, if you can just get a place to start, then oftentimes organic relationship will take place as a result. And so, what Jay and I like to say is it's really hard to love somebody if you don't know their first name. And so we just encourage people to start there, learn some names. And then, some of your neighbors will want to hang out with you. Some of your neighbors won't. And so just kind of follow the breadcrumbs and see which people that you're drawn to and want to spend time with, and just go from there. So I think we complicate things a lot of times. And the block map, the little tic-tac-toe board, just helps to make this idea of like knowing your neighbor concrete and simple.
Yeah, that's been a fun thing for us to do, is getting to know our neighbor. We moved in five years ago, and yeah, that is, Dale Carnegie in his book How to Win Friends and Influence People says the number one word in anyone's vocabulary is their own name. And so it's so important to get to know somebody's name. One of the big ideas in your book is kind of what if Jesus actually meant that we're to love our actual neighbor. Talk about that just for a minute.
Yeah, I think for a lot of my life, Jonathan, I wanted to choose how I was going to love my neighbor. I'm going to go serve on these nonprofits. I'm going to go get involved in this organization. I'm going to try to do things at work or with the parents on my kids' soccer team. And all of those in Jesus's economy is, caring about your neighbor. But it's easy to fill up our life with so many things that we choose to do, that then we think that sprinkles magic fairy dust over our actual neighborhoods. And then Jesus wasn't talking about them. And I've just learned there's something really special and powerful about proximity-based relationships. And I think Jesus was really smart. I think when he boils the entire Bible down to one thing and says, love God with everything you have, love your neighbors yourself, I think he's given us a really simple strategic plan that if we did it, as believers, it would change the world overnight. But most of us, in my experience and my own personal story, most of us have figured out a loophole into actually doing it. And so, yeah, I just continue to see this over and over again about how powerful this is when people do it. And I just think right now, the season that we're in this pandemic, there's never been a better time to engage and connect with your neighbors. We don't have those face-to-face relationships at work or at school or even at church right now, but we're seeing our neighbors more than we ever have.
Yeah.
People are more visible. And so I think that the time's right to get out there and to be a connector in the places that we live and just take the next small step to get to know the people that live around us.
Now, in my mind, my thought was when the pandemic happened and the shutdown was happening, that it would kind of shut down opportunities to neighbor, but it's actually opened up this whole other thing that's been kind of incredible. I was kind of shocked. So I've had more conversations with neighbors than maybe I've had in a long time. And I'm seeing people walk down my street that who are you? And so it's been really cool. So like in my church, and I just know I'm an extrovert. I'm like the guy that I was saying this to our good neighbor Zoomcast the other night. I'm the guy that they talk about in Proverbs who be careful not to enter your neighbor's house too often lest he hate you. That's me. So I don't have a problem. I'm an extrovert. But what would you say to like introverts? And because I know a lot of introverts are hesitant about the Great Commandment, what would you say to them?
Yeah. I would just encourage introverts. You don't have to be somebody else. You don't have to make up some new personality to take on you can just invite people into the things that you're already doing. If you like to cook, if you like to garden, if you like sports, if you just invite the people who live around you into things that you're already up to. And it will push you if you're an introvert. It'll stretch you outside of your comfort zone. And even if you're an extrovert, this stretches you. And by the way, that's a good thing. Jesus doesn't give us a gospel of like, hey, I just want you to be comfortable all the time. So that's I think that the times where we step out, the times where we stretch a little bit out of our comfort zone are often the times where we grow the most.
Yeah. Last question, Dave. So hang it all out here. Dave Runyon moves his family. He's starting in a new neighborhood. What would you do to kind of begin in neighboring? So you're starting all over. What would you do?
I would be very intentional about being visible. I'd spend time in my front yard. I'd take walks. It's really hard to be a good neighbor if you're not in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so right now, there's all kinds of ways to be visible because so many people are present in their neighborhoods. I think it's really important. We didn't say this yet, Jonathan. It's important to figure out how do we be safe and care for the vulnerable and to make sure that we're not putting anybody in danger. But it's possible to neighbor from 6 feet away. Yeah. And that's what we need to figure out right now as we move forward with this. And this is a great time to get a little bit outside your comfort zone and just take the next small step with the people who live closest to you. And I think if you're willing to do that, you'll be genuinely, surprised at what happens as a result.
Yeah. In our city, we want to reach, we want to see half of our population come to Christ by 2030. And just so you know, I'm not blowing smoke up your skirt or anything, but like this book is a big part of that. And we believe it's not going to happen without prayer, and it's not going to happen without neighboring. And so it's a big part of our paradigm of how we're going to reach our city is your book. And so I just wanted to say thanks.
Well, and I know, Jonathan, you've been leading a group of pastors and leaders who are thinking about the city together. I know we had some plans before all this happened. Yeah, I was going to be out there in the fall. I don't know. We don't know what that's going to look like now, but I'm excited. Anytime there's unity, anytime we're answering Jesus's prayer in John 17 for unity, great things happen. I see it over and over again. So I'm excited about what God's doing in your community and through your church. So it's going to be fun to watch. And you and we can figure out what the best way forward is and how to engage. But I'm along for the ride. I'm in.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate you, man. God bless you. And is it sunny there in Colorado today?
It is today. Yeah, we got some good weather going.
Good, man. Well, hey, enjoy the sun and blessings to you, brother.
Hey, you too. Great to be on with you.
All right.
The Front Yard Mission podcast is sponsored by The Flower Box. The Flower Box is one of the top online resources for cookie decorating supplies, monthly cookie classes, and oodles of free video tutorials. Flowerbox.com features an extensive line of creative cookie cutters, cookie stencils, and cookie decorating kits. Plus, find the book, The Crafted Cookie, a beginner's guide to baking and decorating cookies. The Flower Box team is passionate about helping home bakers find joy and purpose through cookies. The Flower Box is based in Center Hall, Pennsylvania, and online at flowerbox.com. That's FLOURBOX.com. The Flower Box is honored to support Front Yard Mission.
Welcome back, and thanks again to Dave Runyon for that interview with Jonathan. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And of course, if you were listening, you caught some classic Jonathan one-liners, like his so-called life verse about staying out of your neighbor's house lest he hate you. It's a great one. Always gets a laugh. There were a bunch of good takeaways from this conversation, right? I really enjoyed hearing these two guys talk about it. One was hearing Dave talk about the origin of the art of neighboring, how Dave's journey into better loving his neighbors actually started with a request from their mayor. Essentially, the local government was saying, we need the church to actually be the church, to love our neighbors well. You know, we talk often in Front Yard Mission about having a provocative faith, that people are drawn to you and ask you for the reason that the hope that you have, that the way that we live out our faith should draw out a response from others. And so, you know, what's clear, and if you dig into that story that Dave was alluding to, you know, they were living and loving in such a way that the leaders in that community took notice, and it led to greater opportunities. And so, you know, I think that is something for all of us to keep in mind, is the way that I'm living and loving my neighbors compelling a response. I also think it's interesting, you know, right now there's a lot of debate about government programs and funding and who should be paying for what. I'll tell you what, here's one thing that shouldn't be controversial. We should want the church to be doing what the church does best. We should want the people of God to do what we do best when we're gathered and when we're serving and when we're loving. Because when we're living out what Jesus put in our DNA to do, there is no greater force for good in the world. If you look at human history, no organization has made a bigger impact in tangible ways and for eternity than the church when it's doing what Jesus has called us to do. Hey, another big theme from the conversation was the importance of names and proximity. It's hard to love people if we don't know their names, right? That's why in Front Yard Mission, we always encourage you to learn your neighbors' names. Maybe you knew them once. Maybe you forgot. Ask again. As we like to say, the best conversations happen on the other side of awkward, so lean into that awkwardness. Ask their names. It's okay. They probably forgot yours too. And you know what? If you need a memory refresher, don't forget our friends over at blesseveryhome.com using publicly available data to remind you, who lives around you and helps you pray for them regularly. So great tool there. I also really appreciated Dave's encouragement to be outside and available and present. It is so much easier to talk to people and get to know them when we're out and about. Another simple habit, take walks around your neighborhood. When I'm working outside, I'll take my earbuds out. I think I've mentioned this before, but that way it's easier to talk to people as they walk by. Now, listen, if you live in a colder climate, I get it. Being available and outside and present is a little harder in the winter, but you know what? People still walk their dogs. You still got to, shovel the driveway, whatever it is that people are doing outside. The point is, you look for opportunities to connect by name, in person, and with intentionality. So what about you? What themes stood out? Any takeaways that resonated with you? We'd love to hear your thoughts as always. Drop us a message here. In Spotify, you can comment right after the podcast episode. We look for those. And, of course, connect through our other social media channels online. We always love hearing from you. And before we wrap up, I thought it'd be cool to give you a little sneak preview of what's coming up. Jonathan and I we've really enjoyed doing all these episodes. The first, I don't know if we're really even referring to them as seasons on here, but the first group of episodes was really going through a lot of the themes that are in the book, helping people, familiarize yourselves with the themes there that make up the book. And then we got into a bunch of interviews, and some of those interviews were with some pretty famous and well-known people, and other interviews have been with people who are living it out in their day-to-day, and I really have enjoyed all of those. The next group of episodes, and we're looking forward to this, because Jonathan and I, we've been wanting to do a series on Front Yard Mission at work. And for those of us who are in the workplace, and that is me, I have a regular day job. We often spend more hours in the office or in the workplace with our coworkers than we do with our families or even our physical neighbors in a given day. And that makes work a huge and often overlooked part of living out our front yard mission. So in these episodes coming up, we're going to hear from people who are doing it well and share practical ways to love your neighbor at work. It's going to be a great series of episodes. I can't wait. As always, thank you for listening. Until next time, keep loving God, keep loving your neighbors. See you soon.
Go to Amazon.com and pick up your copy of our book, Front Yard Mission: How to Start a Love God, Love Neighbor movement in your neighborhood. If you're interested in learning more about Front Yard Mission, find us at frontyardmission.com or join our Facebook or Instagram community where you can find tips, stories, and encouragement to help you with your front yard mission. The Front Yard Mission podcast is sponsored by The Flower Box, produced by Nick Baumhart, and hosted by Steve Lutz and Jonathan Weibel. Our theme music, How to Heal a City, was written by Jonathan Weibel. I'm Trisha Brock. See you next time.